On January 25th, 2002, Christopher Tompkins woke up for work as usual and headed for the office. When Chris arrived, he parked his car and hopped into the car of one of his co-workers to head out to the job site, which for this day was in nearby Ellerslie, Georgia, a small unincorporated town in Harris County. After their lunch break, the four men went back to work. They were working in a line, each about 50 feet away from each other. Chris and one of his co-workers were chatting until his co-worker stopped to work on something. When he turned back around, Chris wasn't there. At first, he figured Chris probably stepped into the trees nearby to use the bathroom. But when Chris didn't return after several minutes, the rest of the crew started to look for him. Chris was nowhere to be found. Where is Christopher Carlton Tompkins? And how could someone seemingly disappear in a matter of seconds? Is foul play involved? Hello strangers, welcome back to the Strange Bar and Grill. I'm your host, JP. Today we have a bizarre mystery that'll send chills down your spine. This is the missing persons case of Christopher Tompkins. Christopher Carlton Tompkins was born on December 28, 1981 in Columbus, Georgia, to his mom, Ann McKenzie. Ann was a doting mother and would raise Chris in the city of Columbus. Columbus, Georgia sits on the banks of the Chattahoochee River and borders the state of Alabama. Christopher Tompkins enjoyed many things, but mostly focused on being a devout Christian and a good son to his mother, Ann. At 20 years old, Chris was working at a local surveyor's company in Columbus, Georgia. He was enjoying the work, and things seemed to be going well for him. His mom babysat for Chris's boss, the owner of the company, and was happy Chris found a good job that he liked. On that morning of January 25th, 2002, Chris showed up for work as always around 8 a.m. He hopped into the car of his co-workers, and together they carpooled up to their job site for the day in Ellerslie, Georgia. Ellerslie was about a 25-minute drive to the northeast and was in a much more rural area compared to Columbus, although there were still some businesses and homes scattered throughout. They were surveying an area off County Line Road in Ellerslie near Warm Springs Road. The crew took a lunch break at around 1 p.m., and by 1:30, they were all back at work. They were working in a line format. Each guy was about 50 feet away from the other. Chris and his nearest co-worker were chatting back and forth a bit, and then the co-worker had to stop to complete a project for a few minutes. When that co-worker looked back up, Chris wasn't there. At first, he figured Chris walked off for a minute. Maybe he got a call, or maybe he had to go to the bathroom. But as the minutes ticked by and Chris wasn't coming back, his crew started to get worried. They noticed Chris's tools on the ground where he had been working, but didn't see anything else. When they called out for him, they were just met with silence. Chris Tompkins had disappeared. The crew spent a couple of hours walking around the area looking for Chris. They called out to him and got no response. They also didn't find any of his belongings. He had left the tools he was using behind, but other than that, there was just no sign of Chris. Almost immediately after Chris vanished, one of the workers called his wife. He allegedly called his wife to tell her that Chris was missing. What's interesting is that no one thought to call Chris's mom, at least for a few hours. It would be 4:15 when Ann finally was told that her son was missing. Ann and some family members immediately went to the area where the crew had been working off of County Line Road in Ellerslie. They also tried to alert the authorities of Chris's disappearance, but they were told that they needed to wait 24 hours before they could do anything since Chris is an adult. Now, they weren't going to not look for Chris and just wait for the police, so they started searching the area themselves, and before long, they made a startling discovery. They found one of Chris's work boots dangling off the edge of a barbed wire fence near where the crew had been working. They also found some loose change in the ground and a piece of torn blue fabric that Ann thought might have been from Chris's pants or the flannel shirt that he had been wearing when he left the house that morning. Now, it's unclear why the co-workers who had searched the area before the family didn't find these items themselves. So did somebody come after the workers left and put them there? Were these items planted? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Now, by the next day, on January 26th, the police finally came to the scene to start searching. They even brought in special search dogs and bloodhounds to see if they could find which direction Chris might have gone in, but the dogs turned up with no scent to follow. Law enforcement was convinced that Chris left on his own. He was 20 years old, and they thought he just wandered on an adventure or to go do something else with his life, which seems very uncommon. I don't know why they always just assume someone just left. I told a story recently about a young child, I think he was 4 years old, and the cop said he just ran away from home. A 4-year-old does not run away from home, go look for them. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here, guys. Let's get back to the story. Anyway, the police thought that he wanted to go on an adventure and go do something else with his life. But of course, Ann did not buy that for a second. Chris was happy. He was a well-adjusted guy. He liked his job. He was close to his mother, and he was said to be a very devout Christian, which that doesn't mean you won't run away from home. But I think all the other factors are definitely in play here. Someone that close to their mother just wouldn't run away, I don't think. But Ann said, what kind of devout Christian would walk out on their family, especially their mom, who they love so much and they're close with and whom they live with. And I think she's correct. But authorities continue to believe that he just left on his own accord. There were no signs of a struggle, and they didn't have any other evidence to point them in another direction. Ann couldn't help but wonder, do the crew members know more than what they're saying? Let's give a little background on Ellerslie, Georgia, before we proceed here. Now, Ellerslie, Georgia is a small unincorporated town just 18 miles to the northeast of Columbus, Georgia, where Chris was from. It's pretty rural, but it's not completely uninhabited rural. In 2020, the population was just over 1,000 residents. It's a little blip on the map, but there's a post office, a restaurant, several churches, and even a Dollar General today. Now, I can't be certain what that area looked like back in 2002, but Google Maps can take me back to 2008, and it honestly doesn't look much different than it does today. It's rural, lots of wooded areas, but you can't go too far without coming across a house or a small business. So you're not exactly in the middle of nowhere. Specifically where the crew was working, County Line Road and Warm Springs Road is pretty rural, but again, homes are scattered about. Certainly something could have happened and there could be no witnesses, but in the light of how much time has gone by and how much searching was done in that area, mostly by family, it's hard to imagine that he could still be out there. Now, there are several small lakes in that area or some types of, bodies of water. There wasn't much in Ellerslie aside from some small businesses and houses, but they do have Ellerslie Park. According to their website, Ellerslie is a new park, so I'm not sure if it was actually there in 2002. If it wasn't, then what was in its place? But in order to actually leave Ellerslie, one would have to get into a car or a vehicle. It's a small town with no public transportation. So if Chris walked away from the job site in Ellerslie, where did he go? How did he get there? 6 months later, less than a mile from the job site where Chris vanished, a farmer was out walking his property when he stumbled across something that shouldn't have been there. He alerted authorities right away, and it was soon confirmed it was Chris Tompkins' other missing boot. The boot was found in a wet, marshy area, and no other signs of Chris was discovered. Law enforcement had to take another look at the case now. This wasn't the type of land you'd go walking around in without your boots. In 2009, a hunter came across some skeleton remains in Harris County. While authorities sent those remains off to be analyzed and identified, many people wondered, could this be Chris Tompkins? When the results came back, however, it was determined it was not Chris. There are actually many missing persons cases within Harris County, Georgia. There is even a Facebook page set up specifically for that part of the state. The page is called Help for the Missing of Columbus, Georgia, Chattahoochee Valley. Now, according to records, there were over 100 active missing persons cases in the greater Columbus, Georgia area. Law enforcement says they receive an average of 5 missing persons calls a day, and most of them turn out to be runaway teenagers. Crime in Ellerslie isn't really known since it is an unincorporated town, but crime rates in Columbus, Georgia are quite high. According to NeighborhoodScout.com, Columbus, Georgia has a rating of a 9, which means that the city is safer than only 9% of other cities. So with this information, let's jump into some theories and possibilities. Theories on Chris's disappearance vary greatly depending on who you talk to. So if you talk to the police and listen to their theory, they believe that Chris walked away to start a new life. Let's examine that for a second. Did he just simply leave work that day and walk away from his life? This is what authorities initially thought, although I suspect that they may have changed their tune now since so many years have gone by. But this theory leaves me with many questions. Okay, let's say he walked away from his life. Where did he go? He was on foot, so did someone pick him up? And why did he leave? He didn't appear to be in any financial trouble, didn't appear to be in any trouble with any bad people out there, so why would he leave? And wouldn't he have shown back up by now, at least contacting his mother that he loved so much and was real close to, just to let them know that he was okay? I don't think this theory is very plausible. The second theory, foul play. Now, quite a few people have leaned towards this theory, specifically with a focus on the co-workers. And some things they have done have made people even more suspicious. One of them allegedly called their wife to tell her that Chris was missing hours before they alerted his mom. But is this necessarily suspicious? Maybe they didn't want to alarm his mom unnecessarily. Without knowing what that conversation was about, we can't really go on much there. And another point is, while most of his co-workers were cooperative, one of the guys hired an attorney right after and stopped cooperating. Why did he hire an attorney? Was he being cautious? Or was there something he was worried about? Like, I'm generally never against someone hiring an attorney to help navigate the system. In fact, I encourage it because a lot of people get stuck with crimes pinned on them that they didn't even commit, so lawyer up if you can. But in this case, why did he get a lawyer right away? Because his coworker disappeared? Now, I try to put myself in that position, and I don't think my first thought if my friend, my coworker went missing is to immediately lawyer up. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. And another point, one of the coworkers also went to prison shortly after for an unrelated crime, and it was a violent crime. Now, I guess if he's capable of violence, does that show a potential pattern here? Was there a fight at the job site and something transpired and it escalated with Chris Tompkins getting killed? Do you think that's possible? But I just want to make a statement here. Law enforcement never did actually find anything specific to point towards the coworkers as far as foul play or anyone else. Now, the last theory here I want to touch on is kind of supernatural. Typically, I don't get into too much of that on this channel. Now, if this case kind of floating around on social media, a lot of people have been adding their opinions and what they think happened to Chris, and a lot of them think that maybe this is a missing 411 case. So if you're unfamiliar with Missing 411, Missing 411 started as a series of books written by David Paulides, where he focused on people who disappeared in rural North America under bizarre and unexplained circumstances. Many who subscribe to these theories are thinking there is something going on out there that is not from our world, basically. They think maybe aliens, Bigfoot, portals to another time. Again, that's not really my belief here, but I know after this case was kind of spread around online, a lot of people pointed to, this is so bizarre, maybe there's something supernatural, something otherworldly in play here that is unexplained. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But let me know what you guys think of that theory in the comment section. That's kind of a crazy one. But what happened to Chris? It's kind of bizarre. He did leave behind his boots in 2 different places. So you guys definitely got to chime in on this one. Which theory do you believe is more likely? Or do you just have a completely different theory? Let me know in the comment section.